Discuss the important concepts in philosophy, rationalism and empiricism. Hi Kuya, I'm Jewel, together with my groupmate Eliza, and today we'll be diving into two major traditions in modern philosophy, rationalism and empiricism. These approaches are foundational to understanding different perspectives on how we acquire knowledge.
Right, Jewel. Our discussion will center around three critical issues in epistemology. What is the source of knowledge? What can be known? And how do we validate our knowledge claims? By exploring these questions, we'll see how rationalism and empiricism provide contrasting answers.
Rationalism and empiricism are the two primary schools of thought regarding the origins and nature of knowledge. Rationalism, represented by thinkers like René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, argues that reason is the fundamental source of all knowledge.
In contrast, empiricism, championed by philosophers like John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume, posits that sensory experience is the foundation of knowledge. These two perspectives address the central issues of epistemology in distinct ways, leading to different conclusions about what we can truly know.
Let's start with rationalism. Rationalists assert that reason, rather than sensory experience, is the primary source of knowledge. They argue that the five senses can be deceptive and therefore unreliable as sources of true knowledge. Instead, rationalists emphasize intellectual reasoning as the path to understanding.
A classic example that rationalists use to demonstrate the unreliability of the senses is the phenomenon of perceptual illusions. For instance, a tower may appear shorter when viewed from a distance, or an oar partially submerged in water may seem bent. These illusions highlight how our senses can mislead us.
Exactly, Eliza. Because of these limitations, rationalists believe that knowledge derived from reason is more reliable. This approach gave rise to the formal sciences like algebra, geometry, and logic fields, where truths are established through reason alone, independent of sensory experience.
Rationalists subscribe to what's known as the coherence theory of truth. According to this theory, a proposition is true if it is logically consistent with other beliefs within a system. In other words, truth is about internal consistency within a set of ideas rather than correspondence with sensory experience.
Let's summarize rationalism using the three central issues. First is source of knowledge. Rationalists maintain that reason is the primary source. Next, what can be known? Knowledge that is consistent and logical, such as mathematical and logical truths. Third, validation of knowledge claims. Truth is validated through reason and logical coherence, not through empirical observation.
Now let's turn to empiricism. Empiricists like Locke, Berkeley, and Hume argue that sensory experience is the foundation of all knowledge. While they acknowledge the role of reason, they emphasize that our understanding of the world comes primarily from what we perceive through our senses.
That's right. According to empiricists, the physical world is revealed to us through the images we see, the objects we touch, and the sounds we hear. For example, Hume distinguished between impressions, which are direct and vivid experiences, and ideas, which are the faint images of these experiences that linger in our thoughts.
Hume also introduced an important distinction between two types of knowledge claims. Number one, truth of reason. These are a priori truths, such as those found in mathematics, which are certain and do not depend on the physical world. For example, the statement, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. It is true by definition and does not require empirical verification. Number two, truth of fact. These are empirical claims about the world that must be verified through sensory experience. For example, the sun will rise tomorrow. is a matter of fact that we accept based on our experience, but its truth is contingent and not logically necessary. The opposite could be imagined without contradiction.
This distinction is crucial because it shows that while reason can provide us with certain knowledge in the form of logical and mathematical truths, knowledge about the physical world must be derived from experience.
Now let's summarize empiricism using the three central issues. Number one, the source of knowledge. Sensory experience is the primary source, though reason plays a role in interpreting these experiences. Number two, what can be known? Knowledge about the physical world and the contingent matters of fact. Number three, validation of knowledge claims. Empiricism relies on the correspondence theory of truth, where a claim is true if it is corresponding with what we observe in the world.
This brings us to an important dogma in the study of philosophy: the distinction between two types of knowledge claims: analytic statements and empirical statements. This distinction, perpetuated by the logical positivists in the 20th century, remains influential today, even though it is still debated among philosophers.
The distinction is reflected in the classification of sciences. Formal sciences, like logic and mathematics, deal with analytic statements, while empirical sciences, like physics and biology, deal with empirical statements. In contemporary philosophy, we use terms like relations of ideas, analytic, formal, and a priori for formal knowledge claims, and matters of fact, synthetic, empirical, and a posteriori for empirical knowledge claims.
The distinction between these two types of knowledge claims is that denying a statement based on reason or analytic statements would lead to a contradiction, like saying all bachelors are not unmarried men, whereas denying a statement based on facts or empirical statements does not necessarily lead to a contradiction, like saying the sky is not blue.
For rationalists, reason is the sole source of knowledge, and they only accept formal knowledge found in the formal sciences, adhering strictly to the coherence theory of truth. They reject empirical statements as a reliable source of knowledge.
In contrast, empiricists accept two sources of knowledge: reason and experience. They recognize both analytic and empirical knowledge claims and accept two theories of truth: correspondence and coherence. This dual acceptance means they see value in both logical consistency and empirical verification.
Understanding this distinction is vital for anyone studying philosophical analysis. The differentiation between analytic and empirical statements has profound implications for how we approach truth in various fields, whether in philosophy, science, or everyday reasoning.
To wrap up, we've explored rationalism and empiricism. Each offers different answers to the central questions of where knowledge comes from, what can be known, and how we validate our knowledge claims. We also discussed the dogma of the two types of knowledge claims, analytic and empirical, and how this distinction plays a crucial role in philosophical analysis and the classification of sciences.